Are spells just prayers for pagans? Is there a difference between spell work and prayer work? Why does Charlie keep saying prayer weaving? And why is Charlie talking about Charlie self in the third person? Because it's an intro and it makes it more interesting, I think, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, these are things that if you've been reading the book, Druidcraft by Philip Carr-Gomm, you already know the answers to. We're going to delve into this a lot deeper today. We're going to talk about prayer. We're going to talk about spell work. And I'm going to talk about prayer weaving because it's a really important aspect of how I do magic. Let's talk about all that as we walk together down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan Druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the Dagda. And today, stick around for the end of the episode because you're going to get a very special example of cooking with the Dagda as an example of spellcraft.
And it was delicious. Really wanted to do a lot of this in our main episode on the chapter this week, but there's so much in there. This is such a dense chapter of Druidcraft, and it goes into so much. So we're going to talk today kind of the things that we didn't get to. We're going to finish up on prayer, go into prayer weaving, and then into spellcraft. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever the app is you're listening to us on. We do 5 original Christopagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday, and you don't want to miss a thing because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's just get into it now, shall we? All right. I like the analogy that Philip uses in the book. A wish is just hoping something that happens. Prayer is when you invoke some higher power to try to make your wish come true. And spell work is when you bring in other foci of energy and other correspondences into it to manifest and bring the intention to action. I like that rubric for understanding kind of the difference between a wish, a prayer, and a spell. I think it's a really good way of thinking about that. Now, while I think you can do spells with others, to me, the difference between a spell and a ritual is one, how elaborate it is. When I think ritual, I think about if it's going to take you 2.5 hours, it's probably not a spell. But also, I think when you bring other people in, you're dealing more with ritual and ceremony where you're each kind of performing your own spell during it, or maybe jointly performing the same spell during it. But I think that to me is when we go into the word ritual, but we'll talk about that on the ritual episode later in the week. So prayer can be spontaneous, should be spontaneous. I don't think pagans do spontaneous prayer enough. I think that spontaneous prayer gets put into the Christian bucket. And I think that that's weird. I say that because I read a lot of the old stories. And in the old stories, they're invoking the gods all the time. It doesn't matter if you're reading Greek stories or Norse stories or Irish stories.
Romans do it all the time.
The Romans did all. Like there is an invocation of higher power happening throughout these works that it just feels like what it tends to be. Like I was personally speaking, I think the people that pray most are atheists. It's because I think that they're doing it ironically or because it's just cultural vernacular. The amount of times I've heard an atheist say something that started or ended with the words God or Jesus Christ, that I'm like, if I just wrote this down, went into a church and handed it to them and said, this is today's prayer, they would go, yeah, and just go with it. And I'd say that to say that they secretly believe in God or Jesus. I think it's part of who we are as a species. There's been a lot of science that has shown that we co-evolve with religion and that there's a certain base level of spirituality that's in us, whether we realize it or not. It's really interesting how often I hear people unconsciously saying prayer.
The atheists really were the proof in the pudding for me as far as how ingrained religion is in everyone. I started studying them closer. I realized they created a religion out of being anti-religion. And I went, oh my gosh, everything can be a religion. Even the inverse, what's supposed to be considered the opposition of religion is a religion. And I'm like, yep, there you go. Congratulations. You have prove to me the existence of religion and how ingrained it is.
This is where I get to bring out my nerdy, because knowing Latin can be very helpful here. The difference between religio and cultus: a religio is what ties the community together. So anything that is uniting the community in practice and in work is religion, and cultus is devotion to a deity or hero. They had different words for it back then. We still do. We just have started using the word cult differently because certain small religious movements brought it on themselves. And we all know who they are. Not going to go through that here. But to me, the middle step, and to me, the necessary step between prayer and spellcraft, is that I kind of don't do spellcraft. I, I do things that I could. This is where you have to be very careful and not try to do any of the No True Scotsman or any of its cousins. I do things that could be labeled spellcraft and spellwork. And I often, when talking to other people, will refer to them as a spell or spellcraft, just because I don't want to go into what I consider the differences between them. But in composing the terms, the words, the actual ritual that is done during spellwork, I actually do something called prayer weaving. Now, Dion Fortune, in her essay about the Guild of the Master Jesus, talks about when she was writing the prayers for this. She says, and I quote, "Each prayer is designed to call down a different aspect of the divine force, and the ceremony builds out of them as a symphony builds up out of the unfolding motifs." That is one of the best shorthand definitions of prayer weaving I have ever seen. Because in prayer weaving, what you're doing is you're taking different threads and you're weaving them together. When I'm doing my prayer weaving, for example, I am pulling on 3 to 7 primary threads. The 3 threads that are traditionally used are prayer, gratitude, and petition. You can see these 3 threads in most of Jewish prayer and most Christian prayer. And I think you can find them in a lot of other prayer traditions as well, but this is the wisdom tradition from which this comes. And you can see this very strongly in the Lord's Prayer, for example, which I think a lot of people are familiar with, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, right? Praise. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Pray. Gratitude. And lead us not into temptation, for yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Petition. Now, you might be going, Charlie, I heard those all throughout that prayer. They weren't just broken up into that 3 parts. Yes, you're getting it. This is what prayer weaving is. So when you're working with a deity, with a spirit, with a saint, you start by figuring out each of these separately. See, when I say I go to 7, I often will add in the 4 paths onto this. So where am I finding awe? Where am I finding lack? Where am I finding creativity? And where am I finding change or passion? I'll add those in, and sometimes I'll do the 4, sometimes I'll do the 3, sometimes I'll do all 7. But these are the threads, and you figure out each one separately. So who are you doing the prayer to? Who is this prayer, this petition to? Who are you talking to? Now remember, praise, and this, I think a lot of people don't understand what praise is. Praise is not for the deity or hero. We are not here to fluff any spirit's ego. I will say that very flatly. Any spirit that needs its ego fluffed is probably not as big and bad as it thinks it is. They already know that they're big and bad. They already know that they're the best. The purpose of praise is to remind us. It's reminding ourselves why we're talking to this person. When I invoke Bridget and I praise her by saying that she is the lady of the fire and the well, of the hearth and the home, I'm reminding myself these are her domains. This is where her power lies. This is where she brings health and healing and hope and power. It's not because she forgot. It's because I need to make sure I'm remembering. That's what praise is for. We're not just trying to fluff and inflate their ego. And writing the praise portion of a prayer weaving can really help us realize if we're talking to the wrong person.
It's like the sign outside the door. If you read the sign and you go, oh, wait, I'm actually looking for strategy for a hunt, you can go, my bad, wrong place. And step back and Doing it
right?
again. It's a nice reminder.
And so that's what you're doing in praise. You're doing your invocation. You're reminding yourself, why this person? Why, if you want healing, why would you pray to Aramid or Bridget or DNK? Why would you pray to any of these people? There are different reasons that you would invoke any of these figures and others. And you could go on people that you might be praying to Our Lady of Lure for healing, right? Whoever you're praying to, why are you praying? What? And this is what praise is for, to remind you, this is why you are the right person to bring this petition to. You're reminding yourself. And also, most prayer is for ourselves. Remember that. Gratitude, second part, is where we remind ourselves what they have already done. So this could be where you list their history, right? You hear this a lot when, for example, when we did our episode on mourning, and when I prayed to Bridget, in gratitude, I thanked her for reminding us how to keen, for teaching us how to keen, how to pray. This very specific prayer of mourning, wailing prayer of mourning. It can be mythic. It can be grand and cosmic on that scale. It could be remembering something that happened to you, part of your relationship. Again, gratitude is showing, one, your relationship with this entity that you're talking to. Also, reminding yourself of your relationship with them. This is why we are working together, because you see this all the time in prayers to God, as you promise to our Father, right? As Jesus said, you see that in there a lot. And that's part of that. This is why we're talking to each other. So what are you grateful for? What have you actually received from them in the past? What builds that relationship up? And then the petition, because nobody likes it when somebody comes up to you and says, "Can I have $5? You handsome devil." You feel manipulated, right? It's common courtesy to say the other things first. So you write these out separately, and then you weave them together. You don't necessarily say it as three distinct. Sometimes, yeah, that's the best way to say it. Sometimes, like again in our Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. See how it keeps weaving back and forth, making a pattern? We got praise, we have gratitude, we have petition. Praise, gratitude, petition. And that prayer actually ends with an offering, which is something that you can do. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. The doxology there is an offering. This is a prayer of offering, which is another thing that you can weave into your prayer. This is how I write the parts of my prayer that most people would see as the spell. And that's not the spell. The poem that you write, the little prayer that you write, the words that you are going to say that you write, that is not the spell. The actual spell, as Philip Carr-Gomm reminds us, is saying this prayer 9 times. Every time you do a novena, you're doing a spell. Every time you do a tridium, you're doing a spell, because you're taking a prayer that is now ritualized and you're saying it every day for 9 days. That's a novena. A tridium is when you say the same prayer every day for 3 days, generally also with candles lit while you're doing it. Oh, wow, this really is sounding like Spellwork, isn't it? Everybody does magic. We just don't all admit it.
The rosary.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful spell.
It really is. And this is how, if you need to write your own chaplet, this is a wonderful way to write what I would say would be the big B prayers. I think the reason most chaplets are bad, actually, is the small B prayers need to be something quick, easy, clear, simple. Your main prayer is on the big beads when you're doing a chaplet. The small beads are there for meditation and kind of soaking in the energy, building the energy up and what have you. So that's how I write the word part. And that's not a spell. What is a spell? Well, like we just said, am I going to say this so many times? Am I going to say it for so many days? Am I going to light a candle, light some incense? Am I going to ring a bell? And that's where all of the stuff we've been talking about before about correspondences, right? I'm doing a spell for prosperity. What makes you feel prosperous? For me, the smell of oranges. I always knew we were going to be okay when we had oranges in the house. We didn't have oranges in the house. I knew we were in hard times. And especially when the navel oranges came out in fall, if we didn't have them the moment they came out, I knew, well, money's tight. That's how I grew up, right? And citrus in general is if we didn't have oranges, we'd have tangerines or tangelos or lemons, we'd have some kind of citrus in the house. So for me, my correspondence, prosperity is citrus. So I might want to have some citrus oil. I might want to eat an orange. I might want to offer orange slices on my altar, right? Bringing in those things, those other symbols and focuses of power and intention. That is a spell. See, if I just read the words, I said a prayer. If you just say it once, you said a prayer, not a spell. It's adding, I'm going to walk in a circle 3 times around the altar. And then I'm going to light the candle. I'm going to ring the bell. I'm going to say the prayer 3 times. Now it's a spell because you're adding the other intentional acts to build up energy, to focus energy, and to put the energy. That's the big difference there.
I wanted to tell a story about these amazing chicken wings we had for dinner a while back.
So good. I still have dreams.
So good. They were absolutely amazing. And they brought joy and healing. And I wanted to use this because this was definitely Spellwork that brought this about. They were magical. They were definitely magical. I want to use this as an example because it shows both the simplicity of Spellcraft and also how complicated it actually is. Which is why for a lot of stuff, it's like, definitely do the prayer weaving and whatnot beforehand. And so I wanted to break it down for everyone and also reference a lot of the elements that were brought up in the chapter and showing the technique and how it was executed. So it first started with this desire. I had this moment of awe and of inspiration. Earlier in the day, I was like, man, I would love to have an amazing dinner to bring joy and healing. And the inspiration of wings hit. Start with that inspiration. And with that, I knew since it was wings, it needed to be in the air fryer, had to be crispy, flavorful. Because of my digestion issues, it needed to be gluten-free. There's another complication put onto it. And because of budgetary concerns, it needed to be very inexpensive, but still needed to be good quality, because otherwise it's not going to be healing and healthy. So all these complications were brought in. So first I had to start with questing magic. In the end, it's making magic. I'm making these wings. But it actually started with questing magic. I needed to quest for techniques, ideas, what's going to be the sauce, other inspirations. So that's the tools. The additives that were brought in on that spell work, my relationship with the Dagda, I was able to add that in to that and was able to consult with the Dagda going over the different elements. I was able to pull in these other energies that had been developed over years of just all the culinary work that I have done in myself. I was able to pull out those energies and add it in and start weaving all this together. That was just the questing part of that spell. That all went into the forge. Now, I had an element in there of changing magic. Now, changing magic, you have to be very careful with because laws of returning tide, resonance, everything. I needed wings that were inexpensive. That's not something normally just found. And so I need to bring in these other energies. I was working with some of the potential energies that were already in existence, certain price fluctuations, certain markdowns that could happen, that do happen occasionally, weaving that in, weaving in all of the good luck energy that I have been building and cultivating over years and years, that synchronicity where I could just walk in and a thing be what I wanted it to or hoped it would be. Faith, magic was put into it. The hope that I would be able to walk into the store and find inexpensive wings. But I also put in a pressure release valve because I'm weaving all this energy in. I needed to set in if this doesn't happen, what's going to happen with all this energy, right? Because you don't want it to pull up and sour. You need it to be able to be released. And so I was not attached to it having to be wings. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. So a pressure release valve was put in so that energy could be released back into the universe and could continue to flow. It would just be released as a gratitude and put back out into the tide, so maybe it could wash up at a different time. And I also used the additive of resonance. With all that, walked into the store, multiple package of wings half off. The fun thing was it wasn't just I got lucky in my timing. They happened to be pushed up and out of view. They weren't obviously there for anybody. Multiple people had walked past and didn't even notice them there. Got pushed back and were covered by the shelf above it. I just happened to spot it. Actually, part of that was because of my sensitivity to energies and stuff. It was almost like a little twinkle from under the counter And I looked under a little bit and went, oh, hey, oh, there's another, and there's another. And I like basically got 4 big packs of wings for the price of 2. Okay, changing magic, check. So now this goes back into the forge process. It's got to gestate because there's still other ingredients needed that the questing magic is still working on the techniques, the ideas, the sauce, all of that. Then when I get home, it's time to actually execute the making of the wings. And those energies that had been resonating and gestating in the forge were able to come into play. And I suddenly went, oh, hey, if I just did this with the wings and did this with the wings and did this, that should work. And I did that. And then because I didn't really have a time figured out, because up until that point, I had pre-cooked the wings and then would crisp them. It's traditionally like in a restaurant, you would have them pre-cooked and then you would deep fry them. And so then as the forge process is working on that making magic, the making magic tool with all those additives put in, it then happened. We had this amazing, amazing plate of wings that were just perfectly cooked. They were so crispy. They were gluten-free. They were not deep fried. They had an amazing sauce on them. And the sauce was also a quarter of what most sauces would have cost. Even making a sauce from scratch, they used ridiculously inexpensive. It just happened to be an added bonus because it wasn't in there. But with all that, there was still specificity. And I was very careful with my specificity because for certain specific things, like when you're doing your spell work, you have to be careful because anytime you're putting in specificity, you have to make sure you have release valves for that and that you're being specific with those specific things. Like, for instance, back on the changing magic, I specifically wanted good quality, very inexpensive wings. So I was very specific in that. And I was also specific that I was going to get them from the store. Like, I didn't want to have a chicken run out in front of the car to present itself as inexpensive, good quality wings and hit a chicken on my way to the store. I was very specific. I was going to find them at the store. And if I didn't, I wasn't going to have attachment to that. I was going to just release it back. Very specific about that pressure valve as well, because especially when you're getting into the specificities, you've got to build in those other things. And I was specific with making sure they were healthy, quality wings. And yeah, when it was all done,
They were amazing.
They were amazing. They were magical.
They were probably the best wings I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that for hyperbole. Like,
Oh no,
they were so good.
They were so good. And even the cooking time. And that's the thing too. Like a lot of the spell work, like with cooking, like with the culinary arts, it's very simple at face value. Because with cooking, you have the food you're going to prepare, you have the tools, the method you're going to use to cook the food, and you have your additives, your other ingredients and stuff. But it's actually really complex when you start getting into all of it. Because something as simple as cooking is the complexity comes in when you have to take into account, like technically you have to take into account the barometric pressure, the humidity, the temperature of the room, the temperature of the ingredients, the temperature of the tools you're using, like the pans, the spoons, whatnot. You have to take into account your altitude because that's going to affect like all these little things, these additives that go into it. And yeah, that's why spell work is very easy and very complicated at the same time.
This is what we keep talking about when we talk about re-enchanting our lives. I think a lot of people look at magic and spellwork as something that you do at last resort or only for the biggest things in life. It can be very helpful for those things. But if you're not doing what some people might consider little magic, small magic, right? Having a delicious dinner of chicken wings does not sound to a lot of people like something you would do with spell work. But we'd been going through a lot of stress and anxiety. We hadn't been feeling good and we needed something special on a budget, right? And so notice that that's where the intention started. That's the focus. Everything evolved into this meal, right? And it gave us the experience that we were looking for. That's using this magical process to the best of its ability and what will really help you get the most out of magic. So I hope that this has helped you to understand both prayer weaving and spellcraft a little bit better. Yeah, we could do, and if you want us to in the future, do episodes about aligning with the moon and other seasons and what have you to really boost the oomph of your spell work. And we can also talk about enchantment and all the other fun stuff too. But I think we need to start on the basics, because until you start seeing and feeling and understanding just how much these acts can change your life and improve your life, you're not going to have the focus and intention necessary to really do some of the bigger things that you're probably wanting to do. I'm not saying that you don't do those things too, but you need to see that these things work. So I hope that this has meant something to you. I hope that this has helped you out. If it has, let us know what your favorite spell is that you've done recently. Or if you've never done spells before, are you thinking about trying? Let us know down in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if it says you can leave a comment, they don't let us know. So we will have no idea that you did it. So leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. Then head over to creation.com and click on chat. You can leave a comment right there, or you can leave a comment on this episode there if you're listening to us on that page, or if you want to actually find the page, that's all good. I just don't want to add in extra steps. You can put it in the chat. We'll see it. It's fine. Let us know. I'd love to know what you're working on and what you'd like us to talk about more in future. Don't forget, we have a Q&A episode coming up. So if you have any questions about anything that we've discussed in Druidcraft, get those questions in so that we have them for that episode, which is coming up in the not too distant future. All right. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars that you can pass our way, we offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, or you can support us through the Cash App hashtag Creations Path. Thank you to everybody who does that. It really does mean the world to us. It really helps us keep food on the table, keep a roof over our head, and just keep us going. You have no idea. If you don't have any money right now, or you're not sure that we're the kind of people you want to give your hard-earned treasure to, I completely understand that. But if anything that we've done has helped you out at all, or you think it would help out somebody else, please share it with them. That helps us out more than you could possibly know. All right.
On our way out today, we're going to do a little prayer to the doctor. Yo, what's up? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, doctor, we're grateful to have opportunities to sit and share the fire with you and to feast from your cauldron of plenty, recognizing that every ingredient of that cauldron is a delightful additive that can be added to any of our spell work and prayer weaving as we go about our daily lives. Amen.